Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing kind of a different video. You may have noticed that I never posted a wrap up for November or December. I'm woefully behind on things, so I just wanted to take the opportunity to let you guys know what some of my favorite reads were from November and December. So I did read some things that were kind of like medium, and then I also read some things that I didn't love. I also read a bunch of comics because I was like bit by the Star Wars bug and I wanted to be all ready to go before Rise of Skywalker. But I thought that it would be fun to at least highlight some of the books that I read that I really loved. That way I could tell you guys about them, because it's weird for me to like love a book and then not talk about it on my channel at all. And I didn't want to do full wrap-ups because I'm kind of slowing down on filming and editing. So I thought it would be more manageable and also just more fun for me to talk about the things that I actually really enjoyed. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this video. So starting with November, my goal in November was to wrap up as many series as I possibly could. I wanted to complete a whole bunch of them, and thankfully I did so. So 2 of them ended up being standouts to me. The first one being The Toll, which is the 3rd book in the Arc of the Scythe series. This series is so good. I know that you guys have heard so many people talk about it like constantly on BookTube, but it really is well deserved. I think that it's very intelligently written. I really love all of the philosophical questions that go into it. It's such a fascinating idea for a world, and Neil Shusterman just executes it so flawlessly. I will say that I thought The Toll had a little bit of a slower start, but the payoff, totally worth it. This one, as you can see, is quite a lot longer than books 1 and 2. This one was like 625 pages, and we end up meeting a new character in here and also getting to know a character from the other books a little bit better. And the way that everything played out was so exciting. I just could not get over it. I was like totally blown away by this. I can't say that I'm surprised. I mean, there was a lot of pressure for me personally on this book because I loved books 1 and 2 so much, and this just totally exceeded my expectations, and I loved it so much. The next series that I ended up finishing and absolutely loving was Capturing the Devil by Kerri Maniscalco. This is the 4th and final book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, and it wrapped up everything that's been building from book 1 between Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell. One thing that I will say is I was really surprised because from what I understood, this book was going to take place in Chicago, and it does, but it's not until about halfway through the book that they actually go to Chicago, and the beginning half is in New York City, which I definitely love more than Chicago. So that was a really unexpected and exciting development for me. I really liked the case that they were tackling during this time. They were going after the serial killer that was at the World's Fair at Chicago. It was really intense, really exciting, really high stakes. There were a couple of moments in this book where I was like genuinely terrified because I was like, oh no, like what is gonna happen here? But it was so good. It was so well paced. I thought that the romance was totally on point in here. That made me so happy because I ship these characters so hard, and I was really excited to just see the way that everything played out between the 2 of them. Toward the end, that one like really exciting, really scary scene just had my heart racing. It was fantastic. And I actually buddy read this one along with Alexa from Alexa Loves Books and Amy from Sailor Bookworm. The 3 of us had so much fun just like talking about it in our Instagram DM. This is another one where I feel like I had high expectations because I've enjoyed all of the other installments in the series, and Kerri Maniscalco nailed the ending. Like I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to reading whatever she comes out with next. Then I really enjoyed The Bride Test by Helen Huang. This one I actually buddy read with my friend Rachel, and both of us really enjoyed it. I had heard kind of mixed things about this one on BookTube, so I was a little bit nervous going into it since I really enjoyed the kiss quotient so much, but I should not have worried because I loved this one. Like I thought it was fantastic. We're following a guy named Kai who is autistic, and his mother goes to Ho Chi Minh City to try to find a wife for him, and she interviews a whole bunch of girls, and she ends up landing on this one girl that she thinks is perfect for him. So she brings her back to the United States with the intention of setting the 2 of them up. The complaints that I heard were that there was a power imbalance because she was brought to America and living under this guy's roof and needing to do whatever she could to try to please him so that she could stay in the country. And while I do see that, she was a really strong character, and she just didn't strike me as the kind of person that would do anything that she personally didn't want to do. As someone who was coming from a much poorer country and wanted to do the best that she could for her family, I felt like all of her choices made sense, and like everything that she was doing was essentially to give her daughter a better life. So that didn't bother me at all. I thought the way that it was written, she was still a really strong character. I, of course, loved the cameos of the Kiss Quotient characters within here, and I am dying for the third book, which unfortunately I think got pushed back. The release date isn't until like 2021 on Goodreads. It already has a very cute cover, but that one's gonna be following Quan, who seems to be like my favorite person in this series. I loved him in book 1. He's so amazing in the second book, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where the characters are now once we get Quan's story, but I really loved this one. I thought it was great. Wow, I almost forgot to mention Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. This was another series ender that I really loved. This is another one too that I definitely heard complaints about, but I loved it to pieces. I thought that it wrapped things up very nicely. I will say that it was definitely very quick. Like I would have liked if there was like 200 more pages. It was pretty short for a series ender, but it accomplished everything that I wanted to be accomplished. So I was left very happy, and I just love these characters so much. So the scenes between them, like I just genuinely feel them all in my heart and laugh along when things are happening and just dissect all of their words, and I feel like I can read between the lines of what they say versus what they mean. Man, Carden is amazing. So yeah, this cemented the Folk of the Air trilogy as one of my favorites of all time, and I'm so glad that I own a million copies of this series. Then a very surprising favorite is I read my first historical romance novel ever, and I loved it. I read Secrets of a Summer Night by Lisa Kleypas. I'm not totally sure how to say her last name. My friend Alexa swears by this series and pretty much all of Lisa's books. She loves them. So this was where she told me to start though, and she said just in general with historical romance, this is a really good gateway series, and I'm so glad that I took her recommendation because I ended up really loving it. I kind of had no idea what to expect going into it. I thought it was just going to be like a romance between two characters and there was going to be lots of balls and like pretty dresses, and while that's true, there was also so much more to the story than I was expecting. I had assumed that the story would end with like the two characters getting together. There was so much that happened past that point, and there was a moment where I was reading this and freaking out because something happened that I did not see coming, and I was like, Alexa, if this character is not okay, I will literally never take a book recommendation again. I was like all caps yelling at her because I was so worried, but I loved it. I thought it was fantastically done. I have the second copy on hold from the library. I've had it on hold since I was like in the middle of this one, and I'm still waiting for it. So I can't wait because I think this is going to be an all-time favorite series for me. Then I really enjoyed Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This is a thriller novel and it's set in New York City, so I obviously loved that. But it takes place in a building that is right next door to the Dakota, which is famous for where John Lennon was shot. A lot of the story takes place like on the Upper West Side and in Central Park and like by the Bow Bridge and just some of my favorite places in the city. So I just loved it so much for that element of it. I was totally living vicariously through this character who got to live in a beautiful apartment and have like a stunning view of the park from her window. Like she actually could see the Bow Bridge from her window, which is dream come true. Can't even imagine that. Obviously it's a thriller, so there's a lot of stuff going on in here. I will say that this one was wildly unbelievable, and I did not see the end coming, I think because of how unbelievable it was, but I still really enjoyed it. And I think why I enjoyed it so much is because of the New York elements of it. As far as like the thrillerness of it goes, I think that the beginning was a little bit slow paced, and it really wasn't until the last third of the novel, I want to say, that's where things like really picked up and got really exciting. But yeah, definitely entertaining. I really enjoyed it. So I ended up giving it to my mom, and she also read it, and she also really enjoyed it. I also read Well Met by Jen DeLuca, which this actually matches my fleece that I'm wearing because it's like 5 degrees out today. This was a Ren Fair romance. So this was one of my most anticipated books of the year because I went to the Renaissance Fair one time. I want to say it was like 3 years ago. We spent the entire day there, and I can still confidently say that it was like one of the best days of my life. It was so much fun, and I still like vividly remember the food and all of the different acts that we saw, and just like walking around and feeling like you're totally immersed in this world. It's just so exciting. I loved every minute of it. We haven't been able to go back. Like the last 2 years, things have come up on the day where we're supposed to go, and it just like hasn't worked out. But I told Andrew, like, we are making it a priority this year. We are going back to the Ren Fair. There is no way that we're letting another year pass without going. It's a blast. Like, if you haven't been to one, look to see if there's one in your area, because there's so much fun. So anyway, the book. We're following a girl named Emily who moves to this small town with her sister and her niece. The reason that she moves there is because her sister was in an accident and she's not able to drive, and she's kind of relearning how to walk and do all kinds of basic things. So Emily moves there to take care of her and to take care of her niece and to drive her niece, you know, to high school and help her with whatever she needs help with. So her niece is dying to be part of this Ren Fair in their town, which is like a huge event that they put on every year. But in order for her niece to take part in it, she has to have a chaperone that will also be working. So Emily kind of gets roped into this. She's not really on board at first, and she doesn't take it very seriously because she is really busy trying to, you know, make sure that her sister is okay. On the first day there, she meets this guy named Simon, and Simon is in charge of the Ren Fair. He takes it super seriously, and the two of them just immediately clash. Like, they do not get along at all. Simon's really mean to her, and obviously they fall in love. But I really, really loved all of their interactions with each other. I think that Emily misinterpreted a lot of things because of her own insecurities, which added to the tension between them. But it was all just so well told. I love the two of them together. I thought that they were like perfect, and I was rooting for them so much. And I also obviously just loved all of the descriptions of the Ren Fair and the jousting, and Emily was a wench at the tavern. Like, I felt like I was there, and I loved it. And she also ends up finding bookshop in their town, and she was like an English lit major when she was in college, so she kind of hits it off with the bookstore owner and ends up working there a little bit, and it's just so good. Like, I cannot recommend this one enough. I loved it to pieces. It was definitely one of my favorite things that I read in 2019. Then I read Deadly Little Scandals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the second book in the Debutante series. The first book was Little White Lies. There was a cover change for this one, so that's why it doesn't really, you know, kind of stay in theme. And it's also why I didn't end up picking up a physical copy of it, because I didn't want to have mismatching covers. I feel like I've been burned with that in the past, and I also wasn't sure if it was just a duology or if there was going to be a third book. I reached out to Disney and they said that it's a duology, so I think that if you liked the first book, Little White Lies, then you'll definitely enjoy the second book too. It reads so much more like a contemporary story versus a thriller until you get like toward the end of it. There are those little interludes where you get a glimpse of what the characters have gotten up to in the future, and it's just kind of building until you get to that point and then find out what's going to happen from there. This one also was pretty wild, but I really enjoyed it. I love Sawyer. I think she's really entertaining. I love Lily. The two of them together are awesome, and I also really loved Campbell. She was probably my favorite character in the first book, and we got a lot more of her in the second book, which I was really pleased about. And I also really liked that this one involved like a secret society. I thought that was really fun. I'm always into that. Yeah, it was just really enjoyable, really quick paced, and the same kind of quick-witted banter that's kind of like Gilmore Girls-esque. So again, if you liked the first one, you'll definitely like the second one too. I loved both of them. I also really enjoyed the Bromance book club by Lyssa Kay Adams. This one follows a baseball player named Gavin, and his wife kicked him out and she wants to get a divorce, and he is just completely broken and devastated over this. He does not want to get a divorce. He loves his wife so much, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get her back and to make her understand how much he actually appreciates her. So he finds out that the rest of the players or some of the other players on his team and other guys from different sports all have this secret book club, which they call the Bromance book club. So what they do is they read romance novels in order to make their relationships relationships with their significant others better. It's so entertaining and so well done, and it also really points out the way that romance novels are not what people stereotypically see them as. It's not like the damsel in distress kind of situation. Like, the women in them are really strong characters, and it's showing the men like how to be sensitive to them and how they can have a conversation, and each of them views it just so differently from one another because of the way that their brains process things. So it's really entertaining. It's so sweet, and I really enjoyed it. I'm very much looking forward to the second book, Undercover something. Can't remember the name of it, but I can't wait for that one to come out. And then lastly, this one is like totally different than anything that I would normally talk about, but I read Pretty City, New York, which is largely a photography book. Pretty City, New York is like one of my favorite Instagram accounts. They just post the most gorgeous photos from around the city, and I love looking at them. So when they came out with a book, I was like, oh yeah, I need this in my life. So I got it. I read the whole thing in one sitting. Like I said, it's largely photographs. There's a good amount of writing as well. And it just tells you like all about different neighborhoods within the city. It gives you recommendations for different places to try, whether it's like restaurants or dessert or bookstores or just like really nice looking buildings. And it also gives you advice on how to photograph those things. And I found it to be really interesting. I will say that the photos didn't always line up with what they were talking about. So like I would see something and recognize it and be like, oh, I know where that is. But they would be talking about something different on the page. And I would be like, that would be confusing for someone who doesn't know where this photograph was actually taken. So I think that unless you're kind of familiar with the city, it's not the best guide, but it is good in the sense where you can look up the things that they're talking about. Everything that they talk about is photographed, but it's just not necessarily on the correct page. That didn't bother me though, because like I said, I kind of know where everything is, so I just adored it. So that was it. Those were all of my favorite things that I read in November and December. I definitely read a lot more than that, but those were like the standouts to me of the ones that I really enjoyed and would definitely recommend you guys reading if you have the opportunity or if you're just looking for something new. Let me know if you've read anything that I mentioned, and I will see you guys soon in a new video. Bye!